Good morning. You're listening to a very special episode of Drinking Socially, the official Untapped podcast.
Your weekly look at what's happening in the Untapped community and the world of beer.
This episode is brought to you by Untapped and the Untapped merchandise store. Make sure to use the coupon code podcast and you'll save 20% off of anything you can purchase there.
Crazy. Yeah, purchase there. And remember, like, subscribe, do what you do online. Really appreciate it.
And now in eastern North Carolina, where I reside, snow is like this fun idea. But really, our winters here are more like ice storm or really cold rain. But that's okay because a few hours west of here, out in Mills River, North Carolina, or also many hours west of here out in Chico, California, Sierra Nevada Brewing is experiencing winters that you can actually enjoy with snow and skiing, probably some barrel-aged narwhal and a hot cocoa mug that you could enjoy while jumping in between the hot tub and the ski lift. But they've also captured the best part of winter in beer form with their new edition, Powder Day IPA. Now, Harry and I are going to sit back and drink some of it, but we're bringing Scott Jennings along with us. He's the innovation brewer at Sierra Nevada. He's going to be here in just a few minutes. But Harrison, aside from taste, tradition, and I think 8 different hops, why is this beer being featured today?
Right. And this everyone at home saying, Harrison finally did it. He finally got Sierra Nevada on. You're right, but it wasn't just me. We're here also to talk about the badge they're running on Untapped right now for this beer. So it's the Sierra Nevada Powder Day IPA badge. All you have to do, it's one of my favorite kind of badges because it's so simple. All you have to do is check in to one Sierra Nevada Powder Day between January 21st and February 21st. That's it. And the criteria is great. I love the description. It says leap waist deep into this Powder Day double dry hop with lupulin powder for a pile of citrus, mango, pineapple aroma, and flavor. Holy cow. It's super limited, guys. It's only available for a month. So do not sleep on grabbing this beer, grabbing that badge. And with that, I'm thirsty. So, John, let's get Scott on the show. Let's crack this beer open and let's learn a little bit.
Happy to have you here. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Yes. And with that, let's all crack this beer open if you haven't yet. And let's dive into a little Powder Day action. Woo! Oh, man. Man, oh, man.
Well, that's a great sound, isn't it?
I know, that's right. I think I've been conditioned to, as soon as I hear that, my blood pressure drops, my heart rate calms down. Someone closes out all my emails for the day. It's magical.
Oh, this is pretty. You can read through this. This is nice.
It's pretty looking. Look at that.
Now, normally when Harrison and I open a beer, we'll read you some of the stats about it that we can find on Untapped. This one's 7.7%, 45 IBUs. But rather than listen to like kind of the boring old John and Harrison read to you about the beer, Scott, I assume as Sierra Nevada or Nevada's innovation brewer, you may have had a hand in coming up with this Powder Day. Is there anything like really special about this if we're talking to someone that might drink your pale ale or torpedo all the time?
Yeah, there's quite a few things. Definitely a lot of work went into this one. But first of all, cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Virtual cheers.
Wow.
It just came out. We've been working on it for quite a while. The idea is, we're trying to get just a really intense, hop character with flavor, but with aroma as well, of course. Almost do a East Meets West kind of approach. You've got a little bit of that really impactful, creamy, intense, hop character, but it's not specifically and only fruity tropical. There's a little bit of that piney, little bit of dank in there. as well. So, call it a hybrid. I don't know, call it
Nice.
its own type of a thing. But a lot of work went into that one.
So I'm curious about that. We're enjoying a beer. We're talking about work and making a beer. I know from being a brewer in another life that a lot of those days, they're absolutely hard work, but part of that work is drinking a bunch of beer. So tell me a little bit about the R&D in this. Was it small batches and you had an idea of what you wanted, but weren't quite sure on the hop profile, or like kind of take us to the genesis of this beer, the idea of it, and I guess and how it got to in our glasses.
Oh yeah, that's a long story. In a nutshell, I would say it's one part experience, and
Sure.
as Sierra Nevada, we have plenty of experience. It's one part current dry hopping research, and it's also taking into account the idea that we really want to make sure we maintain some IPA diversity, let's say,
Nice.
in what we have to offer. Because you know what? I mean, let's be honest. Most of what we do is IPAs. Really, I mean, maybe not by volume, but pale ale, obviously, not an IPA, not even dry hops, but always a classic. But most people out there, you might have the same opinion, and I hear about this all the time. You guys just do IPAs all the time. You know what? Maybe, but they're all very unique and they're all very different. And every time we throw another one out there, we really put something new and different into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is obvious. Just look at your lineup from Fantastic Haze that I have a blacklight poster of back there. But so Fantastic Haze to little
Keller beer,
Torpedo, Tor. I mean, like they're so different. All the IPAs you have. I think we're all old enough to remember, or just to see the genesis of IPAs, the growth of IPAs. It used to kind of mean one thing, and at one time it was very scary, and it had 100 IBUs, and who could do 120, who could do 130, and there was that competition to burn out everyone's taste buds. But now it's totally different. So, I mean, you could argue that you could make 20, 30 different IPAs, and they are all a different experience. And I think you guys do that really. You do that really well. I mean, Dankful is different than Torpedo, is again different than what we're drinking tonight. Summer Break, when that comes back out, it's like a sessionable. That's totally different. So really, I mean, it's amazing. You guys have been doing this for 40 plus years, and still you're kind of like writing this story that you see other breweries kind of take up and mimic a little bit and go, oh man, why don't we have a hazy IPA in the summer? That seems so obvious. Why didn't we think of that?
Right.
You're doing a great job at it.
Oh, appreciate that. But yeah, this one, Powder Day, kind of a play on words. John, you were talking about, the sort of the winter, maybe skiing reference. But lupulin powder, that's nothing new to most people listening here, and it's certainly not new to the industry either. But that is the focus of the beer in terms of dry hopping. So we're dry hopping on this one exclusively with lupulin powder.
Oh wow!
And I will say this is certainly not the first beer that we've done that with. And a lot of people might be interested to hear that this form of hops is definitely not new. Definitely not new. This has been out there for decades. Decades, definitely. And what you would maybe refer to it as, it can come in either what we call a type 35 or type 45, which typically would be pelletized.
Right.
But nowadays, you can get that pelletized or non-pelletized. And even with the pelletized versions, there are several options there. But it really goes back, really decades as a hop form. So let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah. Yes.
So here's what goes on. So, imagine hops. You got, a room full of hops. and pretty similar to the hop pelletizing process. What happens is the hops get milled very finely using a hammer mill, and then that material is pushed through a die, and then you have hop pellets. Everybody knows what those look like. One maybe important difference is that with the lupulin powder, also referred to as cryo hops, and there's a few other kind of brand names of that process, is the hops are the whole cone hops are essentially super frozen, using liquid nitrogen before the milling process. So a couple of things that does for you. One is you can during the milling, you can preserve the integrity of the lupulin glands to a pretty high degree, so you don't rupture the lupulin glands, which everybody knows is where all the good hop oils reside,
right.
And acids as well. But the other thing that maybe some folks overlook is that, and you'll know this, if you've ever taken hops and you've rubbed them together,
Right.
you get real sticky. Right?
Yes. right.
Real sticky. So when you have this milled hop material, and it is at, I don't know, minus 280 degrees, it's not very sticky at that point in time. And you can then sieve it with like a bunch of screens. And you can reduce or separate, let's say, you can separate out a lot of the green matter, the bract, particularly from the hops, and sift that stuff out, so you essentially can concentrate the lupulin glands, and that's where that T35, T45 name comes in, and that means that from the from the mass, the weight of the original cones that went into the process, 35 or 45, as the case may be, % of that mass remains, the rest having been removed in this sieving or concentrating process.
Right.
And so that's what we're talking about. Now, that resulting material, it can be pelletized as well, and relatively new, I'd say in the last 5 years. There's maybe even less. There's been some technology out there to produce soft pellets. And I think a lot of the cryo products are done in this fashion. So the pellet itself, as it's going through the die with this material, the compression forces and therefore the friction as well is reduced considerably. And so that's one of the things that's like a classic argument against using hot pellets, is that when you press all that material through the die, and maybe for the listeners who don't know what I'm talking about, think about like a meat grinder.
Sure.
You've got a lot of little tiny holes, and you're forcing a lot of material through those little tiny holes.
Right.
And that results in a lot of pressure, and pressure generates friction, and friction generates heat. And heat is not good for hop oil and hop aroma. Right. And so a lot of these new products and processes are incredibly great, and they are able to deliver, finally to the glass, hop aroma that's really better than it's ever been. These are great things, great products, great hops.
Amazing.
Scott, it's obvious you're very qualified for at least for this podcast. We went from hop selection to thermodynamics. And it was, I think Harrison and I have mentioned hops probably a 1,000 times in the last couple of years, but never to the degree that you kind of went into here. I wanted to ask you about the selection process. When I'd assume your position, you can just call out from the mountains and hops will be sent forth on golden chariots. Maybe it's not that simple, but with the knowledge that you bring, is it does that make it harder to find the hops you're looking for, especially brewing at a larger scale?
Oh, well, we plan ahead, I think
Right.
pretty well. Over the years we've developed, wonderful relationships with hop suppliers, and even going all the way to the hop breeding programs around the world. We've been pretty critical in the development, or say not the development, but the bringing of newly developed varieties into the marketplace by
Right.
a lot of these great partnerships over the years. But what we do, and I'll tell you, it's one of those things that we're constantly working on, is the ability to try and figure out. It's that crystal ball thing,
Mm,
we look to the future and we go, what are we going to make next year? And then we
right.
go, I think I could probably guess about 60% of that. And then there's 40% like, well, who knows? and then, well, what hops are we going to want for that and how much? Well, we can predict a bit of that, but certainly not all of it.
Right.
So we work really closely with, hop suppliers, on a few occasions, farmers directly, and the hop breeding programs as well, to really kind of keep some of the doors open so we can really jump on things when we need them. But end of the day, hop is a crop. And you can't always predict what the weather's going to do and how everything's going to come out. And so for all the brewers out there, hop contracting is really, really important. You're not going to get it right all the time. You're going to be over some years, you're going to be under some years, but better than having no plan at all.
Absolutely. That's right. I know
But
those are some of my favorite Sierra Nevada beers. I remember you guys used to do, maybe you still do, but it's been a little bit since I've seen it. It was like Harvest kind of single hops. I remember the first time I ever had Equinox was in 25-ounce bottle from you guys. I think the first time I had Idaho 7 was the first time ever was a beer you guys made featuring
Idaho 7.
Right.
It's a beautiful, beautiful hop, and it's also in Powder Day, by the way, featured prominently.
Yeah.
Equinox is a funny one. We used to call that 366, which was the experimental number, and then it went to Equinox, and now I believe it's called Euconaut. So it's like, the artist formerly known as Equinox.
You made it from a number to a name to a new name. That's
marketing and hops just kind of working together.
Right.
366 didn't quite do it, and now you could not. I did not know that was the same hop, because I was forever like, where's Equinox? Where can I get my hands on it? Can't find it. Now I know why. There we go. And that's great that Idaho 7's in here. And that's, you guys have been so great in just my like personal beer journey, and the single hop series. And that was so cool to do that. Already you have Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, which is, the song of all songs to Cascade hops. But to do that, something similar for other hops, that was always enjoyable for me to enjoy. But as we've alluded to, there are like 8 hops in here. Is that right? 8 different hop varieties about?
Oh, man, Harrison, you might be right. I sort of lose track. But to be honest, we will a lot of times make hop substitutions in any particular beer over the year. It'd be depending on what's available. But in this one, this is a seasonal beer, and it was pretty, solidly designed based on a couple of things. One being the hops that we really specifically wanted to be in it.
Right.
And what we had available to us via our contracting. Maybe we can start in the brew house.
Yeah.
And this kind of goes back to the design of the beer.
Yes.
The overriding principle is to do as little hopping as possible in the brew house.
Okay. Sure.
and then throw everything at it in the cellar with dry hopping. And that's not, revolutionary or anything, but, one of the ways we went about it is to hit BU. We wanted to use again a minimal amount of hops up front with the first edition, what we would call that. So right at start of boil, and I chose a variety called Polaris.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys know that one?
Yes, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, great snowmobile.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's another powder day kind of link. I never thought about that.
Right.
That's cool. But yeah, that one is it's German super alpha variety. It's oh man, it's crazy. It's the highest alpha acid content of any hop variety that I know of.
Wow.
In its raw form, unprocessed, so just regular whole cone hops. You might see 25% alpha acid in this hop. Yeah, it's great. It's a cool one for that. So a lot of times it's used to produce alpha extracts or something like that. I've actually dry hopped with it, and I've been really pleasantly surprised by the results. You wouldn't think to dry hop with a super alpha variety,
right?
But we're dry hopping with CTZs more and more as well. Those are old varieties.
Yeah.
But as a dry hop, I mean, I'm kind of getting off track here, but just I find it interesting. Really. Hops are great, I love talking about
it's your
hops.
powder day.
But it gives a really kind of cool bubblegum character as a dry hop. And I don't know that much of that comes through with the first edition being Polaris. But at any rate, it doesn't take a lot to get your BUs when it's 24% alpha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And go ahead. Sorry.
When you talk about dry hopping with this monster alpha hop, which I know Harrison's familiar and I'd expect you are, but me and hopefully at least 3 of our listeners maybe not familiar with some of that in context. Like the first thing I thought of would be like a dry hopped bitter West Coast thing happening, and it got me really excited. And I don't mean to divert the road this interview is going, but I really wanted to ask before this even started, as the innovation brewer, what are some of like the kind of crazy things that you've produced that maybe haven't been distributed, but might have been shared like in the back of the brew house? I'm just imagining like these really weird beers that would really excite me and a couple listeners.
Oh my God. Where do I start? I've been doing this at Sierra for over 20 years.
Wow.
And a lot of that has been in innovation. And so we've done some really wacky things, and also a lot of stuff that I would consider incredibly, delicious, but never saw the light of day for one reason or another.
Wow.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't know where to start with a question like that. Wow, let me think. On tap at our breweries, you're always going to find stuff that you can't get anywhere else.
Right.
And just as a plug for the listeners who are not nearby our breweries, we do have a really cool program we call the Alpha Hop Society.
Yes.
And that is a subscription that you can get for a year, which will, where legally permitted, allow you to receive in the mail, some exclusive beers that are not available anywhere. And if you happen to live near, either Mills River or Chico, a lot of times you can find these at the tap rooms, maybe, I don't know, 6 months before the release of those with the Alpha Hop Society, because we make all kinds of stuff. We really are playing around with beer every single day. And so much what we do. And anyway, speaking of which, here's kind of like an insider's tip.
Nice.
If you come to the tap room and you see something that says audition, whatever, that is most likely one version of many prototypes for an upcoming, as yet non-disclosed new release.
Ooh. Yep.
Insider tip, big time.
Yeah. So hot tip. Come to the brewery. You're going to find some pretty cool stuff that will be coming out probably within the next 6 months or a year.
Yeah, we did an episode kind of talking about Celebration a few months ago, and Harrison saw something. I think it was at the Mills River location.
Yes.
And I don't remember what it was called, but it was like Celebration drippings.
Yes.
Tell me about this. This blew my mind, but I immediately needed more information. And now we have Scott here. Thank you, John.
Oh my God. Okay, so this is a whole different topic than Powder Day, but we'll come back to that.
Yes,
because I sort of want to wrap that one up too, just for everybody, so you know what we're put out there for that.
Yep.
But Celebration, that beer has been around a long time. I'm going to try and do the 2-minute summary of Celly Drippings, we call it.
Okay.
By the way, we did a barrel aged version of that too, that we called Dry Hop Drops. But here's the story about drippings. So you got to back up a little bit to how we historically make Celebration Ale in and of itself. Right. So we dry hop that in the old school way, meaning you're dealing only with whole cone hops. And interestingly, a little bit of an aside as well, the hop torpedo, which a lot of people know, and that's, there you go, that's the one. That one, yeah, that was one of my first projects
really?
In R&D Chico. Oh gosh, 2006, I think we started working on that. Anyway, totally different subject for a different podcast. But so let's see. Before we had the torpedo, we using whole cone hops for dry hopping. Here's what you do: you got a bag. Imagine like a mesh bag, nylon mesh bag, and it's maybe about the size of a pillowcase. And you stuff it full of hops. You tie a knot in it. You put a carabiner on it, stainless steel, of course. And then you're going to suspend these bags in a tank. And we're talking a big tank, a tall uni tank. And so the way this is done is you on the bottom of the cone of the tank, there's a section that you can unclamp and kind of swing away and expose the, open the tank, open the bottom of the tank. Because typically on the bottom of the tank, all you have is a small valve, but you can swing the cone away. Then up on the top of the tank, there's a small opening, about, 6 inches in diameter that you can undo and remove a cap there. And so what we do is we've got a crane up on top of the tank. And you've got a chain, a stainless steel chain, that is the length of the height of the tank. And I believe that is going to be, maybe say 28 feet or something like that.
Wow.
And so what we do is we lower this, we hook this chain onto the hook of the crane. We lower it all the way from the top, all the way down through the tank, down into the cellar with the cone swung to the side. So it's open. Then we hook these dry hop bags onto this chain with carabiners as we're hauling it back up. And essentially, you're putting as many of these bags on that chain as will physically fit on that chain. And so now you've got a vertical column, a tank. It's like this. It's tall.
Right.
And straight through the center, there's a chain. And on the chain, there's, dozens of bags stuffed full of dry hops, mostly Centennial and a little bit of Cascade in this case. Then once that's suspended in the tank, you have to secure it on the bottom and you have to secure it on the top. Then you close the tank and you purge it with CO2. Then you can take the beer, which has been brewed 3 days prior, and it is in the open fermenters, open top fermenters.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to transfer that beer on the 3rd day of fermentation into this tank that's stuffed full of these bags on this chain. And that's where the beer is going to stay all the way until centrifugation, sitting on these bags of dry hops.
Wow.
Right? That's the way we do it, old school. And so now imagine that beer went in there on day 3. So 11 days later, give or take, that beer has been chilled, the yeast has been removed, maturation has been completed, and now you take it to the centrifuges to remove the remaining suspended yeast and so on, and now you have finished beer, and so on. So you empty that tank, and then all those bags are still in there. They're just hanging in space, right? And these are enormous, giant tea bags. I mean, lots of them too. And everybody knows that there's a little bit of liquid still in there. Not a lot, just a little bit. So what we do is when we filter that tank, we empty it to the centrifuge. It's not filtered. We call centrifugation filtration as well. But once that tank is emptied, we'll let it sit overnight. And the next day, all the beer, which has dripped out directly from all the dry hop bags. And again, it's very small amount. I mean, like a thimbleful compared to the volume of the tank. Right. That amount, we collect it in a portable tank that we have. And we do that for every single tank of Celly that we do in that way. And by the end of the whole seasonal production, we might have grand total of maybe, I don't know, 8 barrels or something, not a lot.
Okay.
And so that we put on, well, let me back up. That used to be something like the distillers call that the angel's share, but we call it the brewer's share. Love because we would reserve it strictly for the brewers, and that was it. That was our own special thing. But eventually we ended up taking that 8 barrels that we would get for the whole year, and we put that on at the tap room, and we call it Celly Drippins. And then for the most part, it was gone within a couple of days because all of the brewers would just go there and drink it all. But occasionally, a non-brewer would be able to get a pint. And so anyway, it's a pretty special thing. Very, very special. We don't like to advertise that because that's our own special internal thing. But if you come to the brewery in, let's say, beginning of October-ish, you might be able to find a pint.
Might get lucky. That's on my list. That's a trip that needs to happen.
Yeah. Man. Yeah. And remember, if you want to propose marriage to Scott, it's Scott J at Sierra.
But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Powder Day.
Right. Let's dive back into this. So we were talking about hops, and really, I'm curious. And now you talked about lupul and powder. So is the torpedo involved in Powder Day at all, or is it a totally different process? So tell us about getting the powder into this beer. I mean, there's so many ways to dry hop something, but I would imagine the powder kind of introduced a new element. So what is that actually like?
Well, to be honest with you guys, dealing with non-pelletized top powder is, frankly, a royal pain in the ass. It's hard to deal with. It's very duffy. It tends to clump. It doesn't like to go into solution. It tends to float. It's kind of a pain. It really is. So why do we deal with that, you may ask?
Right.
Well, it's because and this is, by the way, we started playing around with this stuff long before cryo soft pellets were developed using the same kind of base material.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is, even so, with the soft pelletizing process, some fraction, I don't know what that would be by a percentage, but some fraction of the lupulin glands will be damaged when they go through a dye. Right. Whereas if the material is not pelletized at all, you have a much higher, maybe not much higher, somewhat higher percentage of total lupulin available, which the glands are not ruptured. And for those of you who may wonder about that, the lupulin glands, those are, say, an encapsulated, I don't know, maybe the best way to describe it would be you've got the resins and oils encapsulated within a membrane of sorts that the plant produces naturally. The stuff, if you ever take a hop cone and rip it down the middle, you're going to see all the yellow in there, right. and it looks kind of like pollen, but it isn't. That's the lupulin. But it's, say, an encapsulation of the resins and oils, and when you rupture that, everybody knows when you smell something, that means it's being volatilized right before your eyes. This beer right now, I can smell that. And because I can smell it, that means there's less of that in the beer now than there was 5 seconds ago. And it's the same with hot material. When you rupture those glands, there's just less available to go into the beer, theoretically, than if those are ruptured prior. Where was I going with that?
It's a great journey.
I love it. I feel like I'm in the tank, but talking about lupulin powder and dealing with it.
Oh, right. So what we do is we've got a small mixing tank that you can close and pressurize, and it's got an agitator in it. Okay. And so what we'll do is we'll sanitize all that, and then we'll put sterile water in it. We use deaerated water. So this is oxygen-free, sterile water. And then that goes into the tank. And we're talking a really small little tank. And then you put the powder in it, and then you close the lid. And what we do, and this is really important, I can't emphasize enough. I talk to people about dry hopping all the time. One of the worst things that can happen in your best attempts to improve the hop aroma of your beer is when you introduce oxygen. That's a bad thing. So what happens is with this powder is we put that in DA water, sterile deaerated water. But just because you open the lid, let's say, for example, theoretically, there was 0 molecules of oxygen in that tank. You open the lid, you pour in your powder, you mix it, you're good, right? Well, no, because you opened the lid, and therefore, all of a sudden, there's a whole lot of oxygen in there. Not to mention, the powder material itself contains a lot of oxygen. So you've got to get rid of that. So what we do is we turn on the mixer, the tank is closed, we maintain pressure around 14 pounds. And then in the bottom of the tank, we've got something similar to like a carb stone. And we'll run CO2 through there and vent it very slowly. So you've got ample positive pressure in this tank. You're mixing vigorously to help, liberate the oxygen from the hop matter. And you're breaking up the clumps, and you're creating an even media, and you're getting all the oxygen out. And we do that until we measure. Let me think. I think we're measuring less than 50 parts per billion oxygen on that vent gas coming out of there.
Oh, wow.
And then we pump it into the tank, and we shoot it in just like you would dose anything else. We put it in towards the top of the tank. We got a side port that we pump that into, and it's under the beer liquid level, and you just pump it in. at that point. That's all you
Mm-hmm.
do. I mean, it sounds
That's
easy
simple.
enough, but it's a pain in the butt. It really is.
Yeah, I mean,
because not only getting it in there is kind of a challenge, but getting it out again is also a big challenge.
Yep, dropping that tank and whoever is cleaning it. Oh man, it's probably a mess, but it's worth it because the product's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, obviously on the label, you look at the can, you read a bit about it. One of the things that stands out is it's double dry hop. So this is more maybe almost a philosophical question. Maybe not. Maybe it's very technical. But what does that mean? And I get what it means, but I've heard people say, well, you have to do 2 different dry hop sessions, or some people saying you're using twice as much dry hop material, double the amount as you would normally. But let's just talk about for this beer, are you just doing that kind of lupulin powder process twice? Where's the double come in?
Yeah, that's a good one. And I think you hit it on the head. That's sort of a, how you interpret it kind of a thing. I'm sure a lot of people will say, well, you have to dose it twice. And others will say you have to just use double the amount that you would normally use in something else. I don't know. That's a tough one. In our case, I would say in this beer, we're leaning towards the latter, where we're just using double the amount that we're normally doing. Because technically, most of our IPAs are dry hopped more than once.
Right.
So that definition doesn't, hold. Because we don't call out, a hazy little thing as being double dry hopped, but and technically in that way it is. Right. But and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about the use of the very high alpha variety in the brew house, which I neglected to follow up on because we started talking about celebration. But the second hop in the brew house and the only other hop in the brew house is added 20 minutes before the end of the boil, and that's another high alpha variety called Hercules, which is a little less alpha than Polaris, but it's by far the biggest production hop grown in Germany right now. So we're using that for flavor, but also for bitterness. And then in doing that, all in, we're not using a heck of a lot in the brew house for poundage, pounds per barrel. So what that does for us is it allows us to really shift, a lot of, say, late hopping that we might do in the hopback or whirlpool, which is pretty typical for a lot of things. We shift away from that in this beer, and we throw all of that stuff in on the cold side. So we're doing a pretty good sized dose, technically 3 times in the cellar. Once is during primary fermentation. The other is during what we call warm to cold. So as you're in the process of chilling down the tank, and then a third dose, again, all with lupulin, just prior to filtration.
Wow.
So by doing that, we're trying to capitalize on a lot of what we know from experience and what we have learned with the recent surge of hop aroma research that's been done in the industry. And we're kind of throwing everything at it. So we're getting the best of, quote unquote, biotransformation type utilizations, which is a controversial term for sure.
Tastes good in the can, though. It tastes good in the can.
That's right. And then we're getting I don't know. Long story short, we're trying to get the best of all worlds based on current research and currently available materials. That's the long story short.
Yep. And you've done it again. I mean, it really is. That's what, I was kind of marveling at before talking to you, Scott, and now I'm marveling at tons of other things. It's just to have these 8 hops be this impressive, to now know that it's been dosed 3 times, but to have it look that clear and beautiful, full of, lupulin powder right before filtration. Centrifuge does what it's going to do. to make it look just like a perfect beer, but smell like, if I was blindfolded, I'd imagine this thing was kind of, and smelling it, some kind of crazy, orange juice looking thing, but it's not. It's this beautiful looking beer.
Yeah. We didn't want it to be intentionally hazy. And it's not filtered. It's only centrifuged.
Right.
It uses of all the total weight of hops that are in the beer, probably, I don't know, 84% of all that mass is as dry hops. And that's you can realize that. And no alpha extracts were used at all, right? It's only whole cone hops in the brew house. So that's where those high alpha varieties come in really handy. And then you can just throw it all into the cellar. Really just keep hitting it 3 times.
Oh, those days must smell pretty amazing with that much hop material floating around in the air, especially as lupulin powder. I imagine it can be like pretty aromatic, obviously. But just being already in the powder form, it probably just smells amazing before you drop it in the tank.
Yeah, it really does. These cryo pellets or lupulin powders, the second you open the bag, it's, it's amazing. It fills the whole room with aroma. And, I like to think that, the second you open the can, you're going to know you're going to drink a hoppy beer. It's really kind of bursting.
It is. It absolutely is. And that's right. It's easy to, or it's exciting for me to open the can without even pouring it out. You just smell it immediately. It's shooting right out of the actual can itself. So that says a lot about a beer and what's to come. And this one is exciting from that first magical cracking noise we all made a little while ago. It just hits you right in the face. And it's another home run from you guys. I'll save us all from complaining about, I wish it wasn't a seasonal, blah, blah, blah. That's, tough nuggets for me. I'll just have to wait each, January to enjoy it again. But, damn, just when I was sad celebration season was ending, not that sad anymore. It's okay. I've got this guy.
right. Yeah, and, every indication is that it's been well received. And so more than likely we'll bring this out next year as well.
Well, I hope so.
Definitely make sure you get out there and check this beer in on Untappd before February 21st is the last day.
That's right.
So celebrate Valentine's Day, check into Powder Day, and let Sierra Nevada or Nevada know that you'd like to see this beer again next year, right, Harrison?
Yeah, please do that. Tag them, tag us, say it in your check-in, all those cool things. But Scott, before we let you go, is there anything else about Powder Day, about this year on the horizon, Sierra Nevada, we should know about, to get excited about?
Oh, man. Good question. I think we covered Powder Day pretty well. In terms of up and coming, we've got a lot of stuff in the works all the time. There'll be a brand new fall seasonal this year. We've got a currently available as Audition in the tap room for those of you in the area.
Really?
We've got coming up next in the brewing calendar, not the yearly calendar. We got the summer break in queue. That's coming back as well. Handful of other things. Just stay tuned.
I love it. And that new variety pack, the little hazy little something variety pack with a hazy little thing, big something. That's cool. The new citrus wheat you guys have.
Yep, that's Sunny little thing. Yep, that's brand new as well. Yep.
I mean, it's a great variety pack. It actually is variety to it. So that's always exciting when you can look at it and look at the 4 beers and go, well, that's my night. And I get to really enjoy myself. From a wild little thing to citrus. So you guys are always doing cool stuff. But, I mean, I really appreciate you taking some time today, Scott. I feel like I learned so much. I'm never going to forget the Selly Drippin story. That's amazing. I'm glad the listeners got to hear about that. That was so cool. But thank you for everything tonight. This has been so cool.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure. Good to see you guys.
Whenever
Yeah.
you decide, Scott, that you may want to take a sabbatical or a long time off, remember Harrison and I are very jealous of what you do, but nowhere near capable of doing it at the level that you are. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule to speak with us and the Untapped and Drinking Socially team. If any of you want to know what it's like to be Scott for a day, go out and get some Powder Day, open it up, and take a big old inhale as you pour that into your favorite drinking glass.
That's right. It'll be hard not to. But thanks again, Scott. This was awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys.
You got it. All right.
All right.
Wonderful.
See you, everybody.
Yep. Have a great rest of the evening.
All right.
Scott.
You guys
man.
too.
He is just a wizard, a man among more mortals. I feel like I know nothing now. Well, I know a lot now, but Scott just flipped my brain upside down. And that story about celebration. I'm so glad you said that, John.
I knew that you would not stop talking about celebration or that dripping story, which is exciting. And it gives us something to look forward to next October. As Scott said, if you're planning your trips to Chico or Mills River and your time is flexible, October, if you want to get something that virtually no one has ever drank in history.
That's right.
But also Powder Day, brand new on the market. You can probably go out to your favorite beer store and pick up a can or a handful of cans. And I was going to ask you, Harrison, how it's going during the interview, but I ran out of this. I want another. This is a really easy drinking. I mean, Powder Day, I could drink it in the summer. I could drink it indoors, outdoors. This was delicious, man.
Already ahead of you, John. I grabbed my second, I poured it into my glass. So that says almost everything I could say about how I'm feeling about this beer. On numero dos of it right now, but it's beautiful. It's amazing. It's everything I want in an IPA. And also something I meant to bring up, but again, time got away from us. This is in a 12-pack. It's 7.7%, and it's like competitively priced. Like, it's crazy, the deal in here, the bang for your buck. Not to mention how packed it is with, now we know, lupulin powder. So yeah, I mean, this thing, it checks all the boxes and then some. It's tasted amazing. It's tasted like a vacation in a glass. Just like when I talked about celebration and felt like, Yeti and Bigfoot were punching me in the head, it feels the same. It's so piney and fruity and amazing. So cool to talk to Scott about it and great to drink alongside him. So again, if you guys haven't grabbed it, get it. I think we made our case.
If you're listening to this show, you probably already know that Harrison is maybe a little bit skewed in Sierra Nevada lore, and that he doesn't think they've ever done anything wrong or could do anything wrong. But I got to agree. And drinking this is just proof positive, right? If you haven't drank it yet, there's a badge on Untapped if that motivates you. If you like beer, you should drink this because it's also good. If you're in that stage where maybe you're scared of IPAs, it's 7 point something. It doesn't bring enough bitterness to scare you away. And it's not super hazy dry hopped where it's going to like ruin your opinion of IPAs for a while. This, Scott said, like, is a hybrid. Great ground to get started. Introduce it to your father-in-law when you're over there for Valentine's Day, celebrating the Powder Day badge. Nothing says I love you like a Powder Day. But aside from weird Valentine's Day beer podcast implications, Harrison, do we got anything coming up next week?
Next week, another beer, another badge. We'll get to it then. But for now, I'm going to enjoy this. I know you are as well. So until next every week, keep your glasses clean, your cellars dark.
Yeah.
Until then, cheers.